Okay, chapter 9, the U.S. Dakota War of 1862. Paul, what was the agency? U.S. government field office. Remember, we talked about those agents, the Indian Affairs agents. Excuse me. Thank you to my friends who are focused and ready. Traditional Dakota, Sam.
The Dakota that wanted to keep the ways of their ancestors and didn't want to assimilate.
Yeah, the Dakota that wanted to keep the ways of their ancestors, their traditions. They did not want to assimilate and to start becoming like the European settlers. Farm Dakota, Molly.
The Dakota who decided to start assimilating and adopting some European American ways.
Yeah, it's the Dakota who decided to do some assimilation and adopt some of those European American ways, like the way that they farmed. Internment camp. Ryan.
A place where civilians and prisoners of war and political prisoners are held.
Yeah, it's that place where we put civilians, prisoners of war, and or political prisoners, that camp that we send them to. Exile, Scarlett.
To leave one's country.
To be forced to leave one's country or homeland. You are exiled, you are kicked out, you're forced to leave. So yesterday we got a few perspectives of the different people that are involved in this coming war. So we got some of their perspectives. Today we're looking at page 175, when the tensions rise. And I don't believe in this class we read the quote on top from Stephen Riggs. Stephen Riggs was one of the missionaries who participated in the treaty negotiations of 1851. He and a small group of Farm Dakota had founded a community at the Upper Agency in 1856. The community disbanded in 1860 because the traditional Dakota were constantly harassing or bullying them. It is true of the change of dress does not change their hearts, but in their estimation it does change their relations to the Dakota religion and customs. It is quite a step for an Indian to take. It is related of the wife of one of these men at the Lower Sioux Agency that whenever she looked at the short hair of her husband, she cried. So it reminded her of that change, and she would just cry whenever she saw his short hair. So the missionary is seeing how it's affecting the Farm Dakota. Tensions rise. As government officials and missionaries worked to change Dakota culture, tensions increased. The whites were always trying to make the Indians give up their life and live like white men. Recall the traditional leader, Big Eagle, or Wamba D. Tonka. The Indians wanted to live as they did before. If the Indians had tried to make the whites live like them, the whites would have resisted, and it was the same with many Indians. So what he's saying is, they're trying to make us change, but if we tried to make them change, saying, well, you're living on Dakota land now, you need to live like the Dakota, the white settlers would say, no, we want to live our way. It's the same with the Dakota. They don't want to change to the white settlers' way. As more and more Dakota accepted European American ways, tensions rose among the Dakota themselves. Many traditional Dakota were angry because the government gave extra food, tools, and livestock to the Farm Dakota. More importantly, traditional Dakota often blamed Farm Dakota for abandoning their heritage. So it's that conflict that we were predicting would happen between the traditional Dakota and the Farm Dakota. Some are changing, some are not changing, and they're starting to get upset with each other. For their part, Farm Dakota had reasons for their actions too. Some truly believed in the changes they were making. Others thought adopting new ways would keep them safe. Both traditional Dakota and Farm Dakota had made decisions based on what they thought was best for their future. However, deep resentments developed that would last for years to come. So they're both doing what they think is right. We need to change because we're not living the same way we lived 1,000 years ago, so we have to change. We need to make some changes so the white settlers aren't scared of us. The traditional Dakota are saying we need to hold on to who we are, to our tradition. This is who are people, who we are. And if we lose that, we lose ourselves. And so they're both trying to make the right choice. They're looking out for each other, but they have differing views. Kind of like in today's society, when we look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they're both trying to do what they think is right for our country. Sometimes they're on the opposite sides, just like the traditional and the farm Dakota are on opposite sides of things. But it's coming from the same place. They want what's best for their country, for their nation. Credit cut off and food withheld. Another source of tension was the fact that the U.S. government had not honored the terms of the treaties. Under the treaties of 1851 and 1858, the U.S. government was supposed to make regular payments of money, food, and supplies to the Dakota. As the Dakota were forced to live on smaller and smaller pieces of land, they became more dependent on these payments. They're not able to live how they used to live. They can't roam about where the buffalo are roaming. They have to stay on these smaller and smaller pieces of land. So they need more help. Unfortunately, annuity payments often arrive later than expected. This was especially true in 1862, as gold coin was scarce due to the Civil War. So the government doesn't have the gold coin to send to the Indians that they owe them because they're fighting in their own war amongst ourselves. So the Indians aren't getting the payment that they need to get to buy the food, and they're not getting those supplies that they need to survive. Uh-oh. When annuities were late, the Dakota often turned to the traders for food and supplies. The Dakota's relationship with the traders was strained as well. Part of the problem was many traders were married into Dakota culture. We've talked about that over these chapters. This made them part of Dakota kinship practices. We take care of one another. We're generous with each other. I should not have more than my neighbor. If they're lacking, I give to them. While many Dakota expected traders to act like relatives and sell food and goods whenever needed, many traders acted first as businessmen. It's not good business for me to give you food and you not give me money in return. Okay? I'm going to lose money. I'm going to go broke. I need to look out for my business. In the summer of 1862, traders shut down the entire credit system. They refused to extend any more credit, so the Dakota could no longer buy the food and supplies they needed. The Dakota don't have money, so the traders aren't going to trade with them. I can see where the traders are coming from. You know, it's business. They don't want to go broke. They don't want to have nothing, but it's not honoring that belief of that generosity that the Dakota lived by. We'll both be poor. I'm not going to be rich and you be with nothing. I'll give you some of mine so we can both have. We're not going to be rich. We're not going to have a lot, but we'll both survive. Whereas the traders are saying, no, I need to take care of myself first. And if you can't uphold your part of the bargain with paying me for the food, then I'm not going to give you the food. The traders were worried that if the annuity money never arrived, the Dakota would be unable to pay off their debts. When a group of Dakota leaders from the lower agency asked the traders to reopen their stores, the traders refused. From that time, the Indians and the traders were unfriendly. Recall the Dakota named Good Star Woman or Weechonk Poistewe. Frustration builds among the Dakota. By the middle of August 1862, the Dakota at lower agency, especially the traditional Dakota, were hungry. They don't have food. They're frustrated and they're getting angry. The annuity payments were late, and Agent Galbraith refused to give them their food from the agency's storehouse until the money arrived. Many Dakota were suffering from a lack of food. Living on the reservation meant the Dakota could no longer travel the plains hunting for fresh meat. Their poor diet meant many Dakota, please stop. Their poor diet meant many Dakota, especially the children, were unable to fight off the sickness. They don't have the medicine like we have. So Rosa's homesick right now. She's been homesick for a couple of days, and they have COVID, took COVID test, but it's winter time. We get fevers and we get colds. So she's homesick, and I was just texting her during switching time saying, hey, make sure you get plenty to drink and make sure you get some protein. You need to keep your strength up. You're not feeling well, but you still have to eat. If you don't eat, you're just going to get weaker. So these kids are getting sick, but there's no food for them to eat to help their body fight off the illness that they have. So they don't have what they need to get better. They don't have the medicine. They don't have food to keep their body, help their body get strong. Think of your mom, and your dad, how would they feel if you were laying sick, you're having a hard time moving because you're so weak and they have no food to give you to help you get better? Are your parents going to be okay with that? No. They're going to get frustrated and angry. No parent wants to see their child sick, and no parent wants to be in that position where they can't help them get better. Edward.
Why did they just grow crops?
Because they're on a very small amount of land, they can only grow a small amount of crops, and there's a lot of people. So there's not enough to go around. It's a good idea, but when you don't have that, think about the farmlands that we see when you drive out into western Minnesota. Those farms are huge. Reservations aren't that big for everyone to have big farms. They'll have a little food. It's not enough. So you have the right idea. It's just not enough. The ongoing stalemate over annuities angered many Dakota. This added to Dakota frustration over loss of land and government efforts to change their traditional ways. Some Dakota wanted to remain peaceful. Others, though, were ready to fight back. They want to try to save themselves. So they're ready to fight because being peaceful isn't working. Big Eagle. Big Eagle, or Wamba D. Tanka, was the leader of a traditional Dakota village at the lower agency. Years later, he told his story through an interpreter to a newspaper reporter. I was still of the belief that it was not best to go to war, but I thought I must go with my band and my nation, and I said to my men that I would lead them into the war, and we would all act like brave Dakotas and do the best we could. So he didn't want to go to war, but so many others did. They were ready for it, and he didn't want to break away from his tribe. He didn't want to leave his nation. So he said, fine, this is what we need to do. I will do it, and we will be brave. They know that they are outnumbered. They know there are more of the white settlers than the white soldiers, but they have to do something to save themselves. Good Star Woman. Good Star Woman, or Wichonk Piwashtiwe, was 8 years old when the war broke out. She told her story more than 70 years later to Francis Densmore, who studied the Dakota and other American Indian groups. An Indian came riding into the camp, so frightened that he could not tell them what was the trouble. At last he said, the Dakota are killing the whites. This was taking place 4 or 5 miles away, but they could hear the guns. 4 miles isn't that far away. And the sound of the guns is coming to them. It's echoing like the boom of thunder. You can hear thunder from miles away. You can hear the gunshots from miles away. The children awakened and began to cry. They're scared. There's this fighting happening. There's gunshots. So the kids are scared. The Dakota are killing the whites. Are they killing the white soldiers? Or are they killing the white settlers? What do you think, Andrea?
The settlers?
I'm guessing they're killing the settlers because the soldiers have weapons to fight back. The Dakota are so angry, they're just fighting, and they're going to fight who they can beat. They can beat the settlers. Is that fair to the settlers? No.
No, but was it fair to the Dakota?
It wasn't fair to the Dakota. So they're fighting back, they're fighting back against the settlers. The settlers are saying, man, we bought this land. The government got it from you. We bought the land. This is our space, and now you're attacking us. It's a hard time, right? It wasn't fair to the Dakota the way they were treated. Not fair at all. So they're fighting back because they were treated very unfairly. They were dying. They're starving. The kids are getting sick and dying. So they're fighting back, trying to save themselves. War is never easy. War is never a good thing. We learned about that with Charlie Goddard. Oh, I want this new adventure, going to war. It's not a glorious thing. It's really sad, the decisions that people have to make. It's sad that we have to fight back to save ourselves, but then we're fighting against somebody who's just going to fight back to save themselves. It's a hard time. With that, we're at the war section. We are going to learn about the war tomorrow. So we're going to pause in our recording and hope anybody at home is doing well, and we hope to see you soon.